Good night. I just want to talk a little bit about consciousness, quantum physics, and attempting to understand the mind in relationship to those qualities. Quantum physics is described as the closest we can get to understanding what is, whatever it is. And at its core, thought in quantum physics is broken down into a quark and a lepton. And that's how we think with these two elements of subatomic particles. So if you think about consciousness as the ability to manifest energy, then as we manifest energy by how we think with a quark and a lepton, we create an electric field that's governed by a vibrational frequency. In mind or consciousness exist in duality, in two. The mind cannot conceptualize one without something else in reference to it. So just as there can't be hot without cold or good without bad, there can't be space without something in it for mind to recognize or appreciate it or comprehend it. So two is how consciousness is, and one is everything. And so if you kind of relate that a little bit to God, and then to us, or Allah, or however you practice that, or mind to no mind, you can see a relationship of 2 to 1. So in our lives, a lot of times we don't want to take the time to break things down and deal with two. We just want to think about it as one. Oh, I'm this or I'm that, and this, everything is just how it is. And so it's not until we decide to break down our consciousness into aspects of duality. Why do I feel this way? Why does this person want? So we look at, we evaluate our life. We take an inventory of our life, and we see all these things inside our life that are either causing us joy or pain. And then if we recognize there's a vibrational frequency that's related to that, and there's an energy that we create by experiencing these qualities, then if we look at that energy as a vibrational frequency, right? So as we think, we manifest an energy that has a direction of purpose, a direction of cause, a direction of response. And then in return, the frequency and the vibrational energy of that is directly related to our emotions. And so how we manifest emotions because of how we think creates a vibrational frequency. If we don't take time to break down why this is creating, we feel this way about this, we have this kind of, and we just kind of allow it all to be one, we generate a vibrational frequency that we bring into every situation. So even though, depending upon how our life has turned out, we can have a very dark, very low, very non-productive vibrational frequency in which we think with, and we bring that in vibrational frequency into every situation that we act. And we may have joy, but underneath it we have that vibrational frequency. And you can notice that in other people who are so happy, or they're so calm. You can see this thread underneath them that they carry into everything and every experience. So for us, in order to be able to break that down into something that's manageable, we have to gain some control over our mind. And that's a very difficult task, because often our mind is left unleashed, and consciousness is just basically dictated to whatever our mind wants to think. It's kind of a difficult thing to think of the mind in the third person, that there's this mind that we use, because we basically tend to think the mind uses us. Whatever the mind thinks is who we are, but we are before the mind is, and that's an aspect of one or non-duality, witnessing duality. So we have to look at this and find, and this term's kind of get lost here, but if we see a God inside us, right? The God inside us is telling us to gain control of the mind. So there's lots of ways to gain control of the mind. They're usually not things we want to do because our mind wants to do what it wants to do. So I think of it as putting a leash on the mind and taking the mind for a walk like the dog. And if we take the dog for a walk long enough and teach it how to act and behave, then the dog suddenly starts to become a disciplined dog that is something that we can work with, much like the mind. So when we decide to take a look at our lives and take an inventory and break it down, it's not an easy day. It almost seems like, oh my God, this is impossible to do in the beginning. But this is kind of like what taking one day at a time, 1 minute at a time, 1 hour at a time, and say, okay, I'm experiencing this. Why am I experiencing this? And what is this related to? When we do this, we start to break down the individual ways we think with a vibrational frequency. We go, I'm putting this type of emotion into how I think, and maybe I'm having too much joy. Joy by itself is kind of something that if you just pursue joy, life winds up getting very almost detrimental. So sometimes you have to look, am I grabbing too much of this? Maybe I don't need that much of this, and I use that metaphorically as far as, trying to have pleasure. Pleasure by itself is really not that rewarding. It's when we work for something that we find pleasure in the outcome of it. So decided to take a look at our lives and say, man, let me start breaking down why I'm feeling this. What's this about? How come this person inspires this? How come this situation makes me feel this way? It seems like a very, very difficult task, but you know what? After a couple of weeks, we start to kind of get used to it. Doesn't make it maybe easier after a couple of weeks. And then as a few months go by, we start to see progress. See, hey man, I'm carrying this emotion into this situation, and this vibrational frequency is not what I want to have in this situation, right? So you start to see it, and sometimes it hurts seeing it. Sometimes you don't really want to recognize that because you're like, man, I'm doing this thing again. I keep doing this again. But as you start to realize it, then you slowly start to gain control over it. So as time goes by, it's not something that we can kind of see like you can kind of watch a seed grow. You just have to kind of let a seed do it, give it what it needs. Water it, let it have sun, do these kind of things, and let it grow on its own. The same thing kind of happens with this quality as we pursue this. After a year, we kind of you can see a lot of growth in yourself, but there's so much more to do, and unfortunately, there's always going to be so much more to do, but progress over perfection, right? We say, hey, I'm making progress in this. And that's when, we get these sort of epiphanies like, this life has a purpose. There's a reason why I'm here. And you start to see that there's a vibrational frequency in how I think. And a lot of times we'd be like, man, I'm not thinking the way I should be thinking in these situations. But instead of seeing those as problems, why is this person just pushing my buttons? Why is this going? It's helping us untie another knot inside our thinking to help us, get to another level. So as the problems we experience and we endure on this awakening happen, it's not easy in the beginning, but say, this problem is an opportunity for me. And if I go into it with this, I'll examine how I think with a specific vibrational frequency, and I'll try to temper that vibrational frequency into something more aligned with acceptance than with denial or blame or arrogance. And as we do that, little by little, our overall vibrational frequency, this kind of one way that we think with, begins to connect to everything, and we start to see everything inside us. We start to see, and the bad and the good, and it doesn't hurt us. It doesn't hurt us as much when we start to see the bad because we recognize that's a part of us, and we can look at that as maybe a chance for us to kind of grow from it. I know that's kind of obtuse and oblique, but if you take a look at that and you really decide, if life reaches a point where it just hurts too much, and you say, you know what, I'm going to give this a try. Give it a try.